Tonight, a big cleanup for a submerged St. John's neighborhood.
Some people living in the east end of St. John's woke up this morning to water covering their backyards and filling their basements. It's all due to a water main break in the east end of St. John's. I'm Jeremy Eaton, and I'll tell you all about it coming up.
The reality is that costs have gone up in everything, right? From a bag of groceries to supplying gasoline to regions of our province.
The Public Utilities Board is pitching changes that could push up prices at the pumps, particularly in rural parts of the province.
There's a lot of electrification that has started. It's not stopping. So we have to take action. We have to start building because the extra capacity and the extra energy that we have now is going to run out.
Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro wants to spend big money to boost power generation. We'll tell you about the billion-dollar surprise from today's energy conference in St. John's.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan. Some St. John's residents are still drying out after a water main break this morning. It didn't just flood basements and backyards in the East End, it submerged them. Here Now's Jeremy Eaton has the story.
This is the morning commute in part of the east end of St. John's. Water everywhere. Filling up basements like this one. And turning backyards into swimming pools. The woman living here woke up to this, her dog's bed now freely floating in her backyard. Underneath all of this water, her basement, filled with irreplaceable items like precious photos, decades of memories, all washed away in moments. The cause of all of this? A 20-inch pipe broke here around 6:30 in the morning. The burst pipe sent water through backyards all over King William Estates. A lot of it ending up in a few backyards and basements. A spokesperson for the City of St. John's says the work going on here behind me will continue into the night with the hopes of having it done by midnight. Now, as for those people who woke up to flooded backyards and basements, well, the cleanup for them is going to take a lot longer than that. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
For a second time this week, vandals targeted a St. John's mosque. Yesterday morning, between 5 o'clock and noon, someone hurled a rock breaking through this window. The mosque, which has only been hosting prayers for a few months, says its congregation is on high alert. Earlier this week, rocks were thrown at the building's main entrance, causing minor damage. No one was there for either incident. Because the mosque on Smith Street has been repeatedly targeted, a spokesperson says the group is now installing more security measures.
We have reported it to the police, who said that they will include it in their list of areas where they patrol. And also we are trying to see if someone can be present at the mosque at times where there is usually none. We still don't know about the intent of this incident, so we don't want to assume the worst or anything like that. We want to find out what is happening. We are asking the congregation to remain calm and be vigilant, but at the same time calm.
A new bill could see the creation of Canada's first ever strategy to combat intimate partner violence, and it all started here in this province. The private member's bill in the Senate may soon become law. Bill S-249 calls for Ottawa to develop a strategy to combat intimate partner violence within the next 2 years. Georgina McGraw is the driving force behind the bill. She's a survivor of domestic violence. Top on her list, education for the public and for judges about identifying intimate partner violence and making it mandatory for hospitals to alert police when they come across a case of strangulation. It's an attack, she says, that can lead to homicide.
As a country, we're failing victims. Our system is failing victims. If they're holding a gun, and I can speak about that because it has happened to me. If they're holding a rifle to you, then there's a distance. Strangulation, they're in your face. Their eyes are in your eyes, except their eyes are empty. Their two hands are around your neck, and they hold your life in their hands. And I don't know if it's the right word to use, but it's so personal. There's such anger behind all of it, but in particular strangulation.
For years, McGraw has been working alongside Senator Fabian Manning to usher in nationwide legislation. Still to come on Here and Now, we'll follow them to Ottawa to make their case before the Senate and hear from other advocates who say a new law could save lives. That feature ahead in about 25 minutes. Well, the province's fuel regulator wants feedback. It released a review on how the price of oil and gas products are calculated. As Here and Now's Heather Gillis reports, it's proposing changes that could mean a spike for rural and remote communities.
When you fill up, the price at the pump comes down to a number of factors. It all starts with the benchmark price. Then the cost charged by wholesalers and retailers like gas stations, add in carbon prices and taxes, plus costs vary depending where you live. 2 years ago, the province mandated a review of those prices. Today, the fuel regulator, the Public Utilities Board, released this, holding its first news conference in at least a decade. If government accepts this report, it all could mean an increase.
But the reality is that costs have gone up in everything, right? From a bag of groceries to supplying gasoline to regions of our province.
The head of the PUB says switching the reporting agency used to set gas benchmarks would lead to more accurate premium fuel prices. The review suggests changing from Platts to Argus, in line with other Atlantic provinces.
Right now, we're just adding 3 cents a litre on top of regular for mid-grade, and then just adding 6 cents per litre for premium. With Argus data, we can actually understand and react responsibly to what the actual premium and what the pricing actually costs.
Also proposed bumping weekly price adjustments a day to Fridays, reducing the number of price zones, and changing the number of days averaged to set the prices to be more accurate.
So people say, why in gas in Newfoundland has gone up 3 cents and it's gone down 2 cents in Nova Scotia. And if we do it all on the same day and we're using the same databases and the same numbers, then it's fairness all around and people can really see that transparency.
Also on the table, changing the markups, down 2 cents for wholesalers, up 2.6 for retailers, a 0.7 cent change overall. But in rural areas like St. Brendan's, Fogo, and Ramia, it could be a 4 to a 5.5 cent jump or more. Garlineau says it's all about supply and demand.
You know, it's the further away you get from the major metro zones, the more expensive it is to get fuel there. If you're looking at, especially if you're not connected to a highway, if you're on an island.
The board also wants more leniency to make its own price changes, and they want to remove stove oil prices from the weekly report because so few use it. Labrador will soon get its own report, and there will be public consultations.
Anyone who wants to give feedback to the PUB about these proposed changes can do so with a presentation by the middle of July or write a letter to be submitted by the middle of August. The board hopes to have a final report and submit that to government in the fall. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Marine Atlantic says mechanical problems with its new ferry will delay crossings between Argentia and North Sydney until June 26th. The company had planned to begin summer sailings from Argentia on June 14th. However, a problem discovered last week with the Alisuinu lubrication system is worse than first thought. Marine Atlantic says about 3,600 passengers will be affected by the delays. Those passengers will be rebooked on added crossings from Port aux Basques, and travel vouchers will be issued. The company says they've developed an accelerated schedule to accommodate the extra travelers.
We're reducing the port times, so port times will now be 4 hours. And we're reducing the sailing time of the crossing to 5.5 hours. And when we do that, what naturally emerges out of the new schedule are additional sailings, and those new sailings will be used in their entirety to accommodate the displaced passengers on the Argentia route. So we're going to put the Argentia route passengers in essentially new sailings. So any accommodations, any motorhome space that was available on Argentia will now be available on Port aux Basques.
A little bit of a change in the weather today. We can thank this area of low pressure for that and where it's sitting right now, but it is bringing some showers to a good portion of the island at the moment. Up across Labrador, still dealing with that warmth, especially for the west and through central areas of Labrador. Still an onshore flow, though, towards the coast thanks to that area of low pressure. So your temperatures are a tad cooler than that. Just taking a look at some of the live shots around Black Duck Siding, looking at some pretty gray clouds there, some dark clouds. Burgeo seeing some showers earlier today. Some fog still lingering in and around Gander, and a beautiful evening in Wabush. Take a look at the shot. We can finally see the Narrows. That's what it looks like. That fog is still offshore there, though, but beautiful evening happening right now, 13 degrees. Southerly wind, that is the reason why things have cleared out. We're looking at about 26 kilometers per hour, so those winds have picked up a bit. We do have some showers, though, heavy at times, working their way a little bit further west at the moment right now, thanks to that area of low pressure. This is going to continue tonight. The weather is going to improve through the weekend. I'll get into it all coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Search efforts are continuing today for a 41-year-old man who was last seen on Monday morning. He left a cabin on a snowmobile for a hunting trip near Mistassin Lake. Aerial searches were conducted yesterday and today. Ground searches were also completed by search and rescue teams from Natwashish and Shehajit. The RCMP says so far there has been no sign of the man or his snowmobile. Well, there was big news this afternoon in the closing session of this year's Energy Conference. The province's Crown-owned utility, the same corporation that brought us Muskrat Falls, has revealed its plan for growing the power grid as demand is expected to surge in the coming decade. And that plan will cost more than $1 billion. Here now is Terry Roberts reports.
We will run up against a brick wall if we do not collectively get this done.
After years of study, the head of NL Hydro announced a big investment today in the province's power grid. And here's what's in the works. A new unit will be added at the Bay d'Espoir hydro station, adding 150 megawatts to the grid. A new combustion turbine capable of using renewable fuels will be installed on the Avalon Peninsula, likely at Holyrood, another 150 megawatts. The extra power will come online by 2034. Estimated cost, north of $1 billion. But there's a third, surprising element to this new strategy. Hydro will buy up to 80 megawatts of wind power, with hopes of reaching power purchase agreements with one or more private wind farm operators.
Hopefully there'll be some active wind supply in the province when we go to call for it. If not, there's lots of companies that show up in jurisdictions and build wind farms.
That's nearly 400 megawatts in total, all in anticipation of an estimated 16% increase in power demand in the coming years. It's a bold strategy for a Crown corporation that's still recovering from the effects of Muskrat Falls, which ran wildly behind schedule, was billions over budget, and is forcing the federal government to pour billions into the province in order to keep power rates affordable. This executive knows there will be plenty of questions, but she says Hydro is being very careful to avoid the mistakes of the past. About 40% of the engineering work is already done, and the utility regulator will have full oversight of the projects. Hydro's strategy will be to plan slowly and methodically, but to act quickly.
So that really should be looked upon by the public as a great place to ensure that these are indeed the right decisions that we undertake go forward.
The need for more power supply is being driven by multiple factors. More and more EVs are hitting the streets. Homeowners are switching from oil to electric heat. And Hydro expects energy demand from industrial and commercial users to also grow, outstripping the extra power available from new sources like Muskrat Falls.
There's a lot of electrification that has started. It's not stopping. So we have to take action, we have to start building, because the extra capacity and the extra energy that we have now is going to run out.
The new supply will also mean this heavy polluter can finally close, but that's still years away.
And so we have to get these assets in service before we can retire Holywood fully.
Hydro hopes to have a more detailed cost breakdown in the coming months and apply to the regulator for approval before the end of this year. As for the impact on rates, that's yet to be determined, and any increases linked to today's announcement are still years away. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
A number of new summer flights at the Deer Lake Airport are putting wind in the sails of local tourism operators. As Here and Now's Alex Kennedy reports, it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Porter Airlines touched down for the first time in Deer Lake with a splash, part of a new daily flight from Western Newfoundland to Halifax. Flair Airlines and WestJet have also launched flights here in recent weeks. CEO Tammy Priddle says, the more the merrier.
Yeah, it's very important for us to be able to have as many different options to keep cost affordable, and the more options we have, the more competition there is for the destination, and that certainly helps people make that decision to choose to come into Newfoundland and Labrador.
More flights means more passengers, and Priddle says the airport is finally nearing pre-pandemic numbers after years of working to recover. That also means more tourists flying into the region. The tourism season is only just beginning, but those in the industry say the recent takeoffs bring a big boost.
So air access is always critical to the growth and success of the tourism industry in this region, not just in Western Newfoundland, but the province in general. So more connectivity with, the introduction of new airlines like Porter, for the return of WestJet or Air Canada using larger planes, that all helps us grow visitation into Western Newfoundland. So it's really exciting to see.
Porter also announced a new direct route from St. John's to Ottawa on Thursday. But while things are joyous at Deer Lake Regional, other airports are facing some turbulence. WestJet announced on Tuesday that it's suspending flights from St. John's to Toronto at the end of October, despite commitments from the company to grow in Newfoundland. CBC News asked WestJet for an interview, but that was declined. Alex Kennedy, CBC News, Deer Lake.
There was a lot of heart-wrenching stories, absolutely.
It wasn't just COVID that presented a health risk for seniors living in care. A new report on the health effects of loneliness is coming up.
Well, the weather certainly improved today for areas, in and around the metro area. Other areas still seeing some rain. The weather is going to continue to improve this weekend. We'll talk all about it coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. The absolute final deadline is midnight tomorrow. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Ashley, I've got a weather question that I'm really hoping you're able to help me with today. I looked outside and I saw the sky and there were sections that were blue. I don't remember that being there before. Is that a new phenomenon here in St. John's, or where does that come from?
It is. It certainly is. You know, a week ago today, we saw some beautiful weather and we've been seeing fog and or really RDF for the last week or so. So yeah, today it was nice. It was nice to see it. Definitely needed the sunglasses a little earlier this afternoon as well. But it's going to last. That's the other good thing. In the next couple of days, it actually looks like we've turned a bit of a corner. Temperatures climbing today as well. Reached 14 degrees in St. John's this afternoon. Still, though, if you're in onshore flow anywhere, you're seeing cooler temperatures. So only about 9 degrees in Twillingate today. Topped out at 8 in Cape Race. But a beautiful temperature-wise anyway along the south coast. 16 degrees in Burgeo, 18 in Stephenville. And then again, another beautiful day with that summer heat, summer-like heat for sure, 26 degrees in Lab City today. Temperature topped out at 23 in Nain today. Take a look at where you're sitting, where Nain is sitting now, 9 degrees. So we've definitely seen a bit of a change in temperatures for you. Otherwise, still beautiful and really still lovely day. Temperature-wise as well across parts of the island. Now, there are some showers rolling through right now, and that's really going to continue tonight. But just wanted to show you what was going on through the overnight and into the today. We saw those winds shift from southeasterlies to southerlies, and that's why we're seeing much better weather than we have been when we've been socked into that easterly flow, which is typically when we see that dense fog. Temperatures 12 to 14 degrees today. Like I said, topped out at 14, but we're down to about 13 at the moment. So we've got that area of low pressure. You can see it's spinning there in a counterclockwise rotation across the island, bringing some rain, drizzle and fog to southeastern portions of Labrador as well. That is no different than it has been for the last little bit. But yeah, a little drier air being incorporated into this low, and that's what's giving us a bit of a nicer day as well. But we do have those showers, and some of those are pretty heavy or will be pretty heavy. They're moving fairly quickly, but we can see some showers between Burgeo there and Rose Blanche is where we're seeing the difference in the heavier showers. So that will continue tonight. Some showers for the west coast as well as this area of low pressure continues to spin. And that's really it. I do think it should stay dry across the Avalon, except if we do see some fog, but the fog should be on the southern areas of the island, just southern areas of the Avalon rather, in that onshore flow. And not a whole lot happening up across Labrador either, with the exception of some drizzle and fog for the southeast. Temperatures tonight between 6 and about 9 degrees across the island. A little warmer for Labrador, particularly in the west, sitting around 11 degrees is your overnight low tonight, otherwise 4 to 9 degrees. And then tomorrow, that area of low pressure still sticking around, so rain, drizzle and fog for a good chunk of the island. Except I do think, again, for the Avalon, we should see a mix of sun and cloud through tomorrow afternoon. Things will dry out and the sun should peek out through a good chunk of the afternoon. Likely going to see that for the west coast and parts of the south coast as well. But again, if you are in onshore flow, you'll likely see some fog develop. Labrador, same thing towards the southeast. Otherwise, another beautiful day. We do have onshore winds, though, for the north coast, and that does mean that those temperatures are going to be cooler. Now, don't get too excited because the rain is going to move back in across the island, or rather across the Avalon. That will happen tomorrow evening and continue through Saturday morning. Temperatures tomorrow, anywhere from 9 to about 16 degrees through the day. Those winds out of the south, anywhere from about 5 to 20 kilometers per hour. And again, the chance of some drizzle in the mix for sure. Labrador, you're looking at about 8 degrees for Mary's Harbour tomorrow with the RDF, and then temperatures pretty much a carbon copy forecast as far as the sunshine and warm temperatures go for central and western portions of Labrador, but again much cooler in Nain, only topping out at about 8 degrees. Long range forecast looks pretty good. I'll tell you all about it coming up.
A new study from Memorial University is shedding light on how COVID-19 restrictions affected those living in long-term care homes during the pandemic. The study surveyed 184 visitors of long-term care facilities and residents, and it found that pandemic restrictions led to feelings of loneliness, isolation, and confusion. Robert Wilson is one of the researchers. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So why did you want to take on this specific area of research?
Members of the Public and Patient Advisory Council involved with NL support came to us with concerns of the mental and physical well-being of residents within long-term care facilities due to the social isolation. So it was kind of a step beyond patient-oriented research, and in fact, it was patient-initiated research. They had the questions, and NL support provided that mechanisms and kind of molded the study so that they could answer those questions.
So what did you find about the overall level of loneliness and the effect that these restrictions had?
Well, I mean, the voices came from the visitors and not the residents themselves, right? So it was their opinion of what was actually happening. And of course, like, I mean, some of the major themes that were coming out was that the concern for the mental health of residents within long-term care due to the social isolation. And a lot of these residents are going to have high cognitive impairments, and perhaps it's going to cause confusion. So, you know, with that being said, some of the recommendations that were coming out was that we have to try to mitigate some of and have a healthy balance of mitigating the risk and mitigating social isolation.
In those interviews that you did with family members, were there any stories that really stood out for you as being emblematic of this situation here?
I mean, there was quite a balance between applauding the long-term care sector because they wanted to put the safety of their resident and loved one first. But there was a lot of heart-wrenching stories, absolutely, particularly in those that, residents, but perhaps going through palliative care, that there was restrictions in place and going through that process. So yeah, there was a lot of heartwarming stories that, that were sometimes hard to read.
There is a risk from loneliness, and, in that research you found that it did, or at least family members really felt that isolation did cause declines in their loved ones. Mm-hmm. But COVID, as we saw in Ontario and Quebec, also really affected the health of people in long-term care homes. We saw, somewhere almost everyone got COVID and many of them died. How do you think they did with finding that balance in Newfoundland and Labrador between those two?
Well, I mean, Newfoundland and Labrador actually did a fantastic job, and the stats speak for themselves on that. I mean, this report is meant to be a reflection on the lessons learned, that perhaps we can have a healthy balance of mitigating social isolation within the residents, because it is important. The mental health and quality of life of the residents is just as important as the physical as well, right? So if we can find a healthy balance between contracting the virus, the actual physical health of the resident, and the mental well-being, that could be the perfect blend.
And how do you hope this research does get used in the future?
Well, I mean, I hope that those decision makers can take the report and perhaps use it as a template that, heaven forbid that something like this ever happens again, that you can use this as a tool to help put those recommendations in place so that we can, lower the cases of social isolation and increase mental health and quality of life within the residents.
Well, thanks so much for coming in and sharing the findings of your research.
Thank you.
We tried every avenue we could to get some intervention, and it's like we met with a brick wall every time we turned.
For Phil Hibbs' daughter, Julianne, a violent relationship had a deadly result. Her family hopes a new bill will usher in a stronger approach and protections for those facing intimate partner violence. A private member's bill in the Senate is close to reaching the House of Commons and possibly becoming law. Bill S-249 would see the creation of Canada's first ever national strategy to combat intimate partner violence. And it all began when a Newfoundland woman started sharing her story and teamed up with a local senator. Ariana Kelland has this special report, but first a warning, the details of the story contain descriptions of violence.
It's a day years in the making, one Georgina McGraw feared might never happen. A key moment in moving toward legislation to tackle an epidemic that's killing women.
I had senators coming to me, thanking me for what I was doing for all Canadians. And all that went through my mind was, 10 years ago you were being beaten, and today here you are, going to sit down to testify. Not for myself, because it's not going to change my story. But there is a big chance that it will change somebody else's story.
Thank you.
So what did we can do about it?
Oh. Georgina McGraw's story is not uncommon, and that's the problem.
I am Georgina McGraw, and I am a survivor of intimate partner violence. My last beating was September the 25th, 2014.
More than a decade ago, McGraw was a businesswoman in Labrador, strong, determined, at the helm of multiple companies, watching growth in her day job, while behind closed doors, everything was falling apart.
It started with a violator from Happy Valley Goose Bay. It became constant emotional, mental, and physical abuse. This nightmare ended with a rifle. He looked at me and he said, "This bullet is for you, and this one is for me."
She survived that relationship, and in 2012, a new man swept her off her feet.
Although I couldn't see any red flags at the time, they were there. I allowed myself to become blind once again. On September the 25th, 2014, I received the biggest beating of my life. He pushed me to the floor, got on top of me, and started strangling me. He would let go and continue with punch after punch, and I knew he was going to end my life. But then I decided I would end it myself.
Before she did that, McGraw placed a call to her sister, who called the police. It saved her life.
I felt so alone.
A year later, McGraw started to speak publicly. She went to the Confederation building, joined a justice committee, spoke to the media, but she knew it wasn't enough.
I've done stuff on the provincial level. Let's go to the federal level, because it just can't be about one province. It has to be Canada as a whole, because we have to talk about every woman or every person that's being abused, when it comes to intimate partner violence. And I called Senator Fabian Manning.
I think we need to look at the whole ecosystem altogether. I mean, the relationship between cod and capelin, it's not just taking one species and trying to determine what has happened.
A longtime politician, provincially and federally, whose career has mainly focused on the fishery.
I wear that with a badge of honor.
Now add champion for those who have been abused by their partners.
I have met personally with 120-odd women here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I've met with different organizations in Ottawa from across the country.
McGraw and Manning grew up in the same area. She trusted him. And in 2018, he brought forward a private member's bill. They aren't often successful. He hopes this one will be.
Basically what we're asking the government is to develop a national strategy which will give
all the organisations, groups around the country an opportunity to participate, to put forward their concerns, and to have, I guess, a piece of legislation in place in the country that would address what is an epidemic in our country at the present time.
Canada already has a gender-based violence plan, but it's not law.
No doubt the action plan is needed, and I'm hoping that it just, is a parallel with the piece of legislation. But legislation is law.
Right now, the bill is pretty bare bones. It calls for the federal government to develop a strategy within 2 years. The Senate Social Affairs Committee has been hearing from advocacy groups, police, and healthcare professionals over the last month.
We need to act urgently. It is a massive epidemic.
Something that hits home with me and is very difficult for me is strangulation. Strangulation, when we go into our hospitals across our country, if we have a gunshot or a knife wound, it's automatic that the emergency room has to, the doctor has to contact the police. Strangulation, it doesn't. If they're holding a gun, and I can speak about that because it has happened to me, if they're holding a rifle to you, then there's a distance. Strangulation, they're in your face. Their eyes are in your eyes, except their eyes are empty. Their two hands are around your neck, and they hold your life in their hands.
For every person abused, the bill means something different.
I have become friends with a family who their daughter was 16 and became involved with a man who was older than her. And they went back and forth to the police dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And there was nothing that the police could do because she was 16. And 16 is considered a gray area. Her daughter was shot.
Debbie Hibbs has talked publicly countless times about the murder of her daughter.
The perpetrator who came into her life took over her life.
It's like nothing changes, and you speak out to raise awareness, but like nobody's listening.
35-year-old Julianne Hibbs and her boyfriend were gunned down a decade ago. Her ex-boyfriend later turned the gun on himself. Her murder was painful. Intensifying it all is that Phil and Debbie Hibbs had only just gotten their daughter back.
Our daughter was living with the person who ultimately murdered her, and we tried every avenue we could to get some intervention, and it's like we met with a brick wall every time we turned.
Julianne was 16 when she moved out with her partner, and her parents' hands were tied. For the next nearly 2 decades, they saw their daughter by chance, a glimpse in the grocery store, passing by each other in the community.
We knew that it wasn't her. We knew it was his control and manipulation, which we tried to portray to law enforcement, and that at the time, and even at one point in the court system.
For them, the proposed bill holds so much promise, but they've had hope before.
I hope the bill is going to go forward and make a difference, but more than that, here's a chance now for government to take this and run with it. Let's see if they will.
There's a double-edged sword when it comes to advocating for something you're so intimately familiar with. McGraw says she's been told she's saved lives, but each time it takes something from her too. For her, it's all worth it.
It's so peaceful. Most times I'd rather be around animals than people. I live in Branch, and it's very quiet, and we have a little hobby farm. And that's where I spend most of my time, and I'm blessed today.
Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, 80 years after storming the beaches of Normandy, 3 Canadian veterans received France's highest award. Ceremonies were held across the country today for those unable to travel to Europe to commemorate D-Day. The largest was in New Brunswick. The CBC's Brett Ruskin was there.
We saw Russell Kay, we saw George Ferguson and Horace Byford, the 3 veterans who fought on D-Day, who were here for the commemoration ceremony, again given this award. The ceremony that happened here in Moncton happened in 2 parts. The first part, kind of down the road, down a pathway from where I'm standing now, saw various speeches, including that from Minister of Foreign Affairs Melanie Joly. Here's what she had to say.
At a time of global uncertainty, we must vigorously defend our values of democracy, freedom, and peace for the next generation of Canadians so they can enjoy the same security and prosperity given to us by those who fought so hard for our freedom.
After the minister spoke, the procession moved down towards this park area here where we heard from the Governor General of Canada, Mary Simon. Here's what she had to say about today's ceremonies.
We remember this day 80 years ago on that 80-kilometer stretch of the Normandy coast that so clearly represented our resolve as allies to fight for freedom. We remember because so many lives were lost and so many others came home with injuries, both physical and mental.
Again, this was the largest commemoration ceremony in Canada. It was organized by Veterans Affairs Canada for veterans and for families or perhaps weren't able to make it overseas to the commemoration ceremonies that took place in Europe. So again, 8 decades after soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, their courage and their sacrifice is being honored both abroad and here at home. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Moncton, New Brunswick.
Well, for the first time since 2015, CBC Radio's The Debaters is returning to St. John's. The long-running show pits 2 comedians against each other, debating ridiculous topics in front of a live audience. On June 17th and 18th, host Steve Patterson will be live on stage at the Holy Heart Theatre, featuring debates that you could only do in Newfoundland and Labrador. The morning show's Daryl Roberts caught up with Patterson on Zoom.
Debaters, your topic is one that we would like to bring back to life. Angels, are they superior to ghosts?
It's always good to be out there. I think that, anytime you tell Canadians from other places, from away, as you would put it, that you're going to Newfoundland, they get very jealous. Anyone who's been there wishes they were going back, and anyone who hasn't been wishes they were going for the first time. So this is, I don't want to say this to the other cities, so don't put this out nationally. But this is one of my favorite cities to go to. Period. So
you have 2 minutes, starting now. Henry Sir.
I think one of the most exciting debate topics that we'll have out there that we obviously couldn't have anywhere else. Does Newfoundland have the best time zone? Let's get that out there. And secondly, Coke versus Pepsi. I understand there's some pretty strong feelings out there. So we could think of no better place to debate this. And then shed party versus kitchen party is another pretty Newfoundland topic. We haven't even opened it up to other parties. It's just kitchen versus shed. So there's debates we're doing out there that we couldn't do anywhere else. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Here to turn the tide on the idea of spending an entire day laying on burning sand.
A lot goes on that doesn't quite make the cut. There's a lot of energy. We love that we tape it in theaters full of people because the crowd is absolutely an essential character on the show. There's so many moments that come out with some crowd members reacting in a good way, just in a really lively way, and then the debaters following it up, as happens at a really good live comedy show. You come in with a plan, something goes a little awry, and then you come up with something on the spot that is even funnier than anything you planned. I've had the good fortune that my buddy Mark Critch has taken me around, out on the water out there and down George Street and all around it. So I've seen all the spots, and I can't wait to go back again. And I do my research, so I'll be everywhere on George Street at least once. The fact that everyone everyone in the crowd that when you do a show in Newfoundland is probably funnier than most of the comedians on the show. It really keeps you on your toes, and the general energy, especially when the weather's nice. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I don't think it will snow in late June, but who knows? But I like it like anyone. I like it a lot better when it's sunny out there and the people can get outside. And the fact that most people that are out there are great storytellers themselves and love laughing makes you love doing shows as a comedian.
Well, we've got a couple of tickets to give away to that taping happening on Tuesday, June 18th at Holy Heart Theatre in St. John's. If you want to go, give us a laugh. Send us your best joke to hereandnow.nl@cbc.ca. Could be a limerick, could be a knock-knock joke. Whatever you think is going to make us laugh, send it along. It's almost Father's Day, a good dad joke. We'll reveal the winner tomorrow night on the show. And again, the email, hereandnow.nl@cbc.ca. Sorry to anyone off the Avalon, we're not paying your way into town. The prize is 2 tickets only to the debaters coming up in 2 weeks' time. You must have been tired of delivering bad news for so long that finally you've got good news in your forecast, at least for those of us on the Avalon. I know Labrador, you've been enjoying wonderful weather and you keep doing that, but for those of us here, it's been a bit trying. So we will hang on any sort of sign of good news.
And I will continue to deliver it over the next couple of days, which was nice. The pattern finally breaking. Let's take a look at what's going on as we head through Friday evening and into Saturday. So there is still going to be some showers, some rain that will move through and across the Avalon as we head through the overnight and into the first half of Saturday. But the area of low pressure that has been sitting south of us and affecting the weather is finally moving off. And that is going to allow the skies to clear, especially as we head into Saturday afternoon, I think, and into the evening before sunset. We should certainly see some sun. Still the chance of a few showers in the mix, though, in and around the island. But overall, it's going to be a much better day weather-wise. And however, those of you that are along the northeast coast in onshore flow, rather, you are going to see some cooler temperatures. Labrador again. A pretty lovely day for the most part. Your temperatures, again, mid to upper 20s for central and western portions of Labrador. Teens, the story for the coast. And there's the temperatures across the island. So a tad cooler for the Avalon than what we're going to see tomorrow. It's just because northerly flow may keep those temperatures a little bit cool. But 12 to 18 degrees across the island. Northern Peninsula, you may see temperatures between 10 and 11 degrees through the day on Saturday. And then as we head into Sunday, definitely looking at a decent day for the most part. We may see some showers, though. A couple of models pointing at the chance of some showers moving in. So going to keep an eye on that one. But for the most part, temperatures are going to start to warm up. And we're looking at daytime highs in and around 18 to 20 degrees. Cooler, though, in onshore flow along the south coast. Same thing for southeastern Labrador and the northern peninsula. And then the rest of the Big Land looking at temperatures in the 20s. A long-range forecast showing temperatures in the upper teens. So that's a big change, nearly 10 degrees warmer than it has been. Now, for central Newfoundland, you're looking at a warm-up as well, about 22 degrees by the time we get into Tuesday. A few showers certainly possible for western Newfoundland, but overall daytime highs in the teens. And then for Labrador, you're looking at a nice stretch of weather. Some showers roll through by the time we get into Tuesday, a bit of a dip in temperatures, and that's the story for Lab West as well. Only about 15 degrees by Tuesday. Speaking of the Big Land, this photo is of Mount Sophie. Some reflections there. Connie shared this great shot with us. If you have any weather photos you'd like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Perfect. You can send in photos. You can also send in jokes. Apparently, we already have a few jokes coming in.
There you
so
go.
if you've got something that you think will tickle our funny bone, hereandnow.nl@cbc.ca could win some tickets to the upcoming show of the debaters.
Perfect.
And that's it for us tonight. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.